The message came on a quiet Tuesday morning when most of Earth was still waking up. Every screen on the planet went dark at the same moment. Televisions, phones, computers, billboards, all of them flickered and died for exactly 3 seconds. Then a face appeared. It was not human. The creature had a head like a mantis, with eyes that reflected light like black mirrors. Its mouth moved in ways that should not have produced sound, yet words came out in perfect English, perfect Mandarin, perfect Spanish, every language at once, translated by technology humanity could not begin to understand. Species designation: human. You have been observed. You have been measured. You have been found acceptable for integration into the Galactic Council's domain. A delegation will present itself at the coordinates being transmitted to your governments. You have no choice in this matter. Refusal to attend will be considered an act of war. The transmission ended. The screens returned to normal, and humanity learned in 60 seconds that it was not alone in the universe, and that whatever was out there did not come in peace. President Clara Dunn was in her office when the message arrived. She was 53 years old, a former lawyer from Ohio who had never wanted to be a politician. She had gray hair that she refused to dye and eyes that had seen too many late nights. She watched the alien face speak its demands, and then she picked up her phone and called Admiral Jack Porter. Porter was 61, a Navy man his whole life, now commanding the United Earth Fleet, all 87 ships of it. Humanity had only figured out faster-than-light travel 12 years ago. They had exactly 4 colonies beyond the solar system, each one struggling to survive. Their military was a child's toy compared to whatever had just spoken to them. "You saw it," Dunn said. It was not a question. "I saw it. What do we do?" Porter was quiet for a long moment. "We go to the meeting, ma'am. We listen. And we pray they're not as bad as they sound." They were worse. The coordinates led to a point in space 3 weeks away at maximum speed. Porter took his flagship, the carrier Endurance, along with 2 destroyers for escort. He brought diplomats, scientists, translators, though the aliens clearly did not need translators, and a security team that he knew would be useless if things went wrong. The council station appeared on their sensors long before they could see it with their eyes. It was the size of a small moon, a sphere of metal and light orbiting a star that was slowly dying, its red glow casting everything in shades of blood. They were met by an escort of ships, hundreds of them. Each one was larger than the Endurance. Porter felt his stomach drop as he counted them, then stopped counting because the numbers had become meaningless. The human delegation was brought to a chamber at the heart of the station. The room was circular, with seats rising in tiers around a central platform. 12 seats at the top were filled with beings that looked nothing like each other. Some had scales, some had fur, some had neither. They were the elder species, the rulers of the Galactic Council, and they looked down at the humans like farmers examining livestock. High Arbiter Velthrax stood at the center. He was taller than any human. His body covered in a black exoskeleton that clicked when he moved. His voice was cold and sharp. "Humans, you are new to the stars. This is not unusual. Many species discover travel between worlds and believe themselves special. You are not special. You are one of thousands who have come before you, and you will be one of thousands who come after." He gestured, and a hologram appeared showing a map of the galaxy. Large sections were colored in the purple of the Council's domain. Earth was a tiny dot at the edge, barely visible. The Galactic Council has maintained order for 100,000 years. We have brought peace to species that knew only war. We have brought purpose to species that knew only chaos. And in exchange, we require tribute. Admiral Porter stepped forward. "What kind of tribute?" Velthrax turned those black mirror eyes toward him. 40% of your colonies will be transferred to Council control. You will provide 2 million workers annually for resource extraction operations. You will limit your fleet to no more than 50 vessels. You will accept council observers on your homeworld. And you will acknowledge the council's authority in all matters beyond your solar system. The human delegation was silent. One of the diplomats, a woman named Linda Cross, found her voice first. And if we refuse? Velthrax made a sound that might have been laughter. No species has refused in 70,000 years. The last one that did no longer exists. Their worlds are now asteroid fields. Their people are forgotten. Even their name has been erased from history. He leaned closer, and Porter could smell something chemical and wrong on him. You have one galactic cycle, approximately 90 of your Earth days, to deliver your answer. Use the time wisely. The delegation was escorted back to their ships. No one spoke during the journey home. Porter found President Dunn waiting for him when the Endurance returned to Earth orbit. She came aboard personally, something no president had done before. She sat in his office, looking older than she had 3 weeks ago. "Tell me everything," he told her. The station, the ships, the 12 elder species and their cold certainty, the tribute demands, the threat. When he finished, she was quiet for a long time. Finally, she asked, "Can we fight them?" Porter wanted to lie. He wanted to tell her that humanity was strong, that they had survived ice ages and plagues and world wars, that they would survive this too. But she deserved the truth. "No, ma'am. Not and when. They have millions of ships. They have technology we can't even identify. They have 100,000 years of experience in crushing anyone who stands against them. So we submit." "I didn't say that." Dunn looked at him. "Then what are you saying, Admiral?" Porter stared out the window at the Earth below, blue and green and beautiful, the only home humanity had ever known. "I'm saying we have 90 days to figure out who we are, what we're willing to live with, and what we're willing to die for." The countdown had begun. The news could not be contained. Within hours of Admiral Porter's return, every person on Earth knew what had happened. The alien transmission had been seen by billions. Now they learned what the aliens wanted. Fear came first. Panic buying emptied stores in every major city. Stock markets crashed and did not recover. Religious leaders spoke of end times. Protests filled the streets, some demanding surrender, others demanding war, most simply demanding that someone tell them everything would be okay. No one could tell them that. President Dunn called an emergency session of the United Earth Assembly. Representatives from every nation gathered in Geneva, their faces gray with worry. The session was broadcast live to the world. There would be no secrets now. Humanity would decide its fate together. The arguments began immediately and did not stop for weeks. "We must comply," said the representative from Germany, an older man named Klaus Richter, whose hands shook as he spoke. "We have no choice. 87 ships against millions? This is not courage. This is suicide." "Compliance is also suicide," fired back Maria Santos, the Brazilian representative. "Just slower. They will take our colonies, then our resources, then our freedom, then our lives. We will die on our knees instead of our feet." "At least we will live long enough to find another way," Richter said. "Dead men find nothing. Slaves find nothing either." The debate went in circles. Submit and survive, at least for now. Fight and die, at least with honor. Each side had logic. Each side had passion. Neither side had answers. Lieutenant Commander Katie Webb was not supposed to address the assembly. She was only 32, a tactical officer who had spent most of her career running simulations and training exercises. But she had spent the last 3 weeks doing something no one else had thought to do, studying the council. She requested permission to speak. It was denied. She requested again. Denied again. On the third request, Admiral Porter intervened, and she was given 10 minutes. She used every second. "The Council has never lost a war," she began, standing at the podium with data screens floating around her. "That is true, but they have also never fought one. Not in 70,000 years." Murmurs rippled through the assembly. Webb continued. "Every species they have encountered has submitted, every single one. The Council's entire military strategy is based on intimidation, not combat. Their ships are enormous, yes, but our analysis shows most of them are transport vessels, mining platforms, and administrative craft. Their actual warships number in the hundreds of thousands, not millions." "That is still far more than we have," someone called out. "Yes, but look at their technology." Webb brought up schematics on the screens. "Their weapons systems are standardized, unchanged in 40,000 years. Why would they upgrade? No one has ever shot back. Their shields are designed for asteroid impacts, not military engagement. Their tactics are simple formations meant to look impressive, not to fight." She paused, letting the data speak. "I am not saying we would win. I am saying the Council has never been tested. They have no idea what a real war looks like. And that matters." The assembly was quiet. Then Dr. Henry Vance stood up. Vance was Earth's foremost expert in alien cultures, a field that had only existed for 12 years. He was a small man with wild gray hair and glasses that were always slightly crooked. He had spent the last weeks reading every piece of historical data the Council had provided, and what he found had kept him awake at night. "Lieutenant Commander Webb is correct that the Council has weaknesses," he said, "but I have found something worse, something we all need to see." He took control of the screens and displayed a list. It was long, stretching across multiple pages, filled with names that were not human. "These are species that submitted to the Council. 347 of them over the last 100,000 years. They accepted the tribute. They bowed. They obeyed." He let that sink in. 112 of those species no longer exist." The assembly erupted. Vance raised his voice over the chaos. "The Council does not just take tribute. They take everything slowly over centuries. First your resources, then your territory, then your population, spread across their empire as workers, soldiers, servants. Within 1,000 years, most submitting species have been absorbed completely. Their cultures erased, their languages forgotten, their homeworlds turned into mining colonies." "And the ones that survive?" President Dunn asked. "They are the ones who proved most useful as slaves. The Vethrani, for example, a reptilian species now used as manual labor across the Council's domain. They were once explorers, builders. Now they dig in mines until they die, and their children are taken at birth to be trained for service." Vance removed his glasses and cleaned them slowly. "Submission does not mean survival. It means a slower death. The Council does not want partners. They want resources. And we are just another resource to them." The assembly went silent. The choice had become clearer, and it was not a choice anyone wanted. That night, Admiral Porter sat alone in his office on the Endurance. He had turned off the lights and was staring at the stars through the window, thinking about his children, his grandchildren, all the generations that might never exist. His door chimed. President Dunn entered without waiting for permission. "I need you to tell me something, Jack," she said, sitting across from him in the darkness. "Not as an admiral, as a man." "What would you do?" Porter was quiet for a long time. "I would fight," he finally said, "even if we lose, because the Council has been doing this for 100,000 years. Someone has to be the first to say no. Someone has to show all those other species, the ones still living under the Council's boot, that it is possible to resist. Maybe we die, but maybe we light a fire that spreads. And if the fire burns us to ash, then at least we burned." He turned to look at her. "What about you, ma'am? What would you do?" President Clara Dunn stared at the stars, at the vast and terrifying universe that had suddenly become so much larger. "I would ask my people," she said, "and then I would stand with them, whatever they chose." She stood and walked to the door. Before leaving, she looked back. "We have 40 days left. Make sure we are ready for whatever comes." Porter nodded. He did not sleep that night. There was too much to do. The vote happened on day 85 of the 90-day deadline. Every nation on Earth participated. Every citizen over the age of 16 was given a choice: submit to the Galactic Council or refuse. The vote was simple: yes or no, kneel or stand. President Dunn did not campaign for either side. She believed humanity had the right to choose its own fate, and she would not put her thumb on the scale. But she did give one speech, broadcast to the entire world, on the day before the vote. "Tomorrow we decide who we are," she said, standing alone in front of a simple blue background. "I cannot tell you what is right. I can only tell you what is true. If we submit, we will live, at least for a time. If we refuse, we may die. There is no third option. There is no clever trick. There is only this choice, and we must make it together." She paused, and her voice softened. "I think about my grandmother. She came to this country with nothing, fleeing a war that had taken everything from her. She built a life here, raised a family, and never once forgot what it meant to be free. She used to say that some things are worth more than survival. I did not understand that when I was young. I think I understand it now." She looked directly into the camera. "Whatever you choose, I will stand with you. We will face what comes together." The vote was 73% in favor of refusal. Humanity had made its choice. Now they needed to deliver it. Admiral Porter had a plan. It was not a good plan. He would be the first to admit that, but it was the only plan they had. He called it Operation Last Word. The destroyer Defiance would jump to the council station alone. A single ship, carrying a single message. If the council destroyed it immediately, at least humanity would have made its position clear. If they allowed it to speak, perhaps something more could be accomplished. Captain Lucas Grant volunteered to command the mission. He was 44 years old, a quiet man from New Mexico who had joined the Navy because his father had joined the Navy, and his father before that. He had a wife named Beth and 2 daughters, and he said goodbye to them the night before departure, knowing he would probably never see them again. "You don't have to do this," Admiral Porter told him. "We can find another captain." "No." "Sir," Grant said, "this is my ship, my crew. If we're going to tell the galaxy who we are, I want to be the one holding the microphone." The Defiance jumped at 0600 hours on day 90. The journey took 6 hours at maximum speed. Grant spent most of that time in his ready room, reading letters his daughters had written him and trying not to cry. When they emerged from hyperspace near the council station, the response was immediate. Thousands of ships surrounded them within minutes. Weapons locked onto the small destroyer from every direction. Grant could feel the tension on his bridge, could see his crew trying not to show their fear. "Open a channel," he ordered. "All frequencies. I want everyone in this galaxy to hear this." His communications officer, a young woman named Corporal Amy Price, worked her console with shaking hands. "Channel open, sir. Broadcasting on every frequency we can reach." Grant stood up and straightened his uniform. On the main screen, he could see the council station, massive and dark against the dying red star. Somewhere in there, the 12 elder species were watching, waiting to hear humanity's submission. They were about to be disappointed. "This is Captain Lucas Grant of the United Earth Federation destroyer Defiance," he began. "I am here to deliver humanity's response to the Galactic Council's demands." He took a breath. "Humanity does not kneel." The words echoed across space, carried by radio waves to every ship in range, relayed by stations across the galaxy, heard by billions of beings from hundreds of species. 4 simple words that changed everything. But Grant was not finished. He nodded to Price, who launched a small probe toward the Council station. It was not a weapon. It could not even scratch the station's hull. It was a data package containing humanity's full response. "We have studied your history," Grant continued as the probe sailed toward its target. "We have read your records, and we have learned what you truly are. You are not rulers. You are not protectors. You are parasites. You find young species and drain them dry, century by century, until nothing remains but empty worlds and forgotten names." On the station, alarms were surely blaring. High Arbiter Velthrax was probably screaming orders. But Grant kept talking. "That probe contains the truth. The names of every species you have destroyed. The stories of every culture you have erased. The crimes you have committed for 100,000 years. We are broadcasting it to every ship in this system, and they are relaying it across the galaxy. By the time you destroy us, trillions of beings will know what you have done." The Council's response came in the form of weapons charging. Grant could see the energy building on his sensors, hundreds of ships preparing to reduce the Defiance to atoms. Then something unexpected happened. A ship broke formation, then another, then a dozen more. They did not attack the Council, but they did not fire on the Defiance either. They simply stopped, their weapons powering down, their crews watching the small human ship with something that might have been wonder. "Sir," Price said, her voice breaking, "I'm receiving transmissions. Dozens of them. From the ships that broke formation. They're asking for more information. They want to know if it's true." Grant smiled for the first time in days. "Send them everything, every file, every record. Let them see what we see." The Council's loyal ships opened fire, but the Defiance was already moving. Grant had planned this part too. His helm officer, a man named Pete Collins, who had once won the Fleet Racing Championship 3 years in a row, pushed the engines beyond their limits. The destroyer twisted and spun through the barrage, taking hits that should have killed them, somehow surviving. "Jump drive charging," Collins reported through gritted teeth. 10 seconds. "Hold together," Grant whispered to his ship. "Just a little longer." A blast tore through the port side. 3 crew members died instantly. Another hit destroyed the secondary bridge. The Defiance was breaking apart around them. "Jump drive ready?" "Jump!" Grant shouted. The destroyer vanished into hyperspace, trailing fire and debris, leaving behind a galaxy that would never be the same. On the Council station, High Arbiter Velthrax watched the human ship disappear. Around him, his advisors were in chaos, shouting about the ships that had broken formation, the transmissions spreading across the network, the cracks forming in an empire that had stood for 100,000 years. "Hunt them down," he ordered. "Hunt them all down." But even as he spoke, he knew something had changed. The humans had not just refused tribute. They had planted a seed of doubt in the minds of every subjugated species in the galaxy. And seeds, once planted, are very hard to kill. The Defiance limped home with half its crew dead and its hull held together by emergency patches and prayers. Captain Grant carried the bodies of his fallen sailors to their families himself, one by one, until Admiral Porter ordered him to stop and rest. But there was no time for rest. The Council was coming. High Arbiter Velthrax assembled the largest fleet in galactic history. 6,000 warships, crewed by soldiers from a dozen loyal species, armed with weapons that could crack planets. The message was clear. Humanity would be made an example. Every species watching would see what happened to those who defied the Council. Admiral Porter watched the fleet's progress on his tactical displays. They were moving slowly, methodically, stopping at every system to ensure no surprises waited for them. They would reach Earth in approximately 8 weeks. 8 weeks to save the human race, he muttered to himself. No pressure. He could not win a direct fight. 87 ships, 86 now after the Defiance was retired for repairs, against 6,000. The math was simple and brutal, but Porter had not become an admiral by accepting simple math. We can't beat them in a battle, he told his command staff, so we won't give them a battle. We'll give them 1,000 small cuts instead. Operation Wasp was born from desperation and hope. Porter split his fleet into small groups, each one assigned to harass the Council Armada's supply lines. Hit and run, strike and vanish. Never engage the main force directly. The first attack came 3 days later. A group of 5 human destroyers ambushed a Council supply convoy in the Kepler system. They destroyed 12 transport ships carrying food and fuel, then jumped away before the escorts could respond. No human ships were lost. The Council barely noticed. 12 ships out of thousands, a mosquito bite on an elephant. But the attack was broadcast across the galaxy. Every raid was filmed and transmitted to anyone who would listen. Humans showed the galaxy that the Council could be hurt, that their ships could burn, that their soldiers could die. The images spread like wildfire through the underground networks of 100 subjugated worlds. On the mining planet of Keth 4, a young human intelligence officer named Sergeant Danny Cole watched those images with the beings he had been sent to contact. The Vethrani were reptilian creatures, taller than humans, with scales that shifted color with their emotions. Once, Dr. Vance had told the assembly they had been explorers and builders. Now they dug in mines 16 hours a day, and their children were taken at birth to be trained as servants. Cole had smuggled himself onto the planet hidden in a cargo container. He spent 3 weeks making contact with the Vethrani underground, a loose network of rebels who dreamed of freedom but had never dared to act. "We have nothing," their leader told Cole, a female named Sethka, her scales permanently dulled from years of dust and despair. "No weapons, no ships, no hope. Why would you come here?" Cole showed her the data from the Defiance's mission, the names of the destroyed species, the history the Council had erased, the truth about what submission really meant. Sethka watched in silence. Her scales slowly shifted from gray to deep red, the Vethrani color for rage. "My grandmother spoke of a time before the Council," she said softly. "I thought they were just stories, fairy tales for children." "They weren't stories," Cole said. "They were memories, and the Council took them from you." Sethka was quiet for a long moment. Then she stood. "What do you need from us?" The uprising began with a single refusal. One morning, Sethka walked into the mine and sat down. She did not pick up her tools. She did not respond to the overseer's orders. She simply sat and waited. One by one, other Vethrani joined her. First dozens, then hundreds, then thousands. The Council guards moved to suppress them. They were outnumbered. The Vethrani had no weapons. But they had numbers, and they had something they had not felt in generations: anger. The guards retreated to their compound and called for reinforcements, but the call spread beyond Keth 4. Other Vethrani heard what was happening. Other species heard. Within days, work stoppages spread to 17 worlds. High Arbiter Velthrax was forced to divert ships from the Armada to suppress the rebellions. The advance on Earth slowed, but it did not stop. "We're buying time," Admiral Porter told President Dunn in their daily briefing. "But I don't know how much time we can buy." "Is it enough?" Porter shook his head. "Probably not. Even with the diversions, they still have over 4,000 ships heading our way. We've hurt them. We've embarrassed them. But we haven't stopped them." Dunn sat back in her chair, looking older than Porter had ever seen her. "Then we need to do something more." "Ma'am, with respect, there's nothing more to do. We've thrown everything we have at them. Every ship, every weapon, every dirty trick I know. It's not enough." "There has to be something." There was a knock at the door. Lieutenant Commander Webb entered, her face pale but determined. "Apologies for the interruption," she said, "but I've been monitoring communications across the galaxy. The rebellions aren't just spreading, they're organizing. Different species are starting to talk to each other. They're sharing information, coordinating actions, asking each other the same question." "What question?" Dunn asked. "If the humans can resist, why can't we?" Porter felt something stir in his chest, something that might have been hope. "How many?" he asked. "How many species are asking?" "At least 40 that we can confirm. Maybe more. They're being careful, staying hidden from the Council's surveillance. But they're out there, and they're watching us." Dunn stood and walked to the window. Outside, the sun was setting over Geneva, painting the sky in shades of orange and red. "Then we need to give them something to see," she said. "If we're going to die, we need to die in a way that matters, in a way that shows the galaxy what's possible." She turned back to Porter. "Admiral, when that armada reaches Earth, I want us ready, not to win, to inspire. Every ship we destroy, every minute we survive, every act of defiance we show. That's a message to everyone watching." Porter nodded slowly. "We'll be ready, ma'am." "Good." Dunn squared her shoulders. "Because I'm going to give a speech. And this time, I'm not going to let the people decide. I'm going to tell them who we are." The broadcast went out that night to every corner of the galaxy. "We are humans," President Dunn said, her voice calm and clear. "We have lived on our small blue world for 300,000 years. We have survived ice ages and plagues and wars. We have always survived because we refuse to give up. We do not know if we will survive this, but we know who we are. We are the species that says no. We are the species that stands. And to every being in this galaxy who has been told that submission is the only option, I say this: watch us. Watch what happens when someone refuses to kneel, and then decide for yourself what kind of future you want." Across the galaxy, billions of beings watched. And for the first time in 100,000 years, they began to believe that change was possible. The Armada continued its approach, the clock continued to tick, and humanity prepared to make its last stand. The Battle of Earth began on a Tuesday morning. Admiral Porter would always remember that detail, even years later. He had expected the final confrontation of the human race to fall on some significant date. An anniversary, a holiday, something that would look good in the history books. Instead, it was just a Tuesday, ordinary and forgettable, except for the fact that 4,000 alien warships emerged from hyperspace near Mars and began their approach toward the small blue planet that had dared to defy them. Porter stood on the bridge of the Endurance, watching the enemy fleet fill his tactical display like a spreading stain. Around him, 93 human ships formed a defensive line. Most of them were destroyers and frigates with a handful of cruisers and the Endurance itself. It was everything humanity had. It was not enough. "All ships, this is Admiral Porter." His voice was calm. He had practiced sounding calm. "You all know why we're here. You all know the odds. I'm not going to give you a speech about glory or sacrifice. I'm just going to say this: We're going to hurt them. For every one of us they take, we're going to make them bleed. And when it's over, the galaxy will know what humans are made of." He paused. "It's been an honor serving with you, all of you. Now let's give them hell." The Council fleet advanced. High Arbiter Velthrax commanded from his flagship, a massive dreadnought called the Eternal Dominion. He had chosen that ship specifically for this moment. He wanted humanity's last sight to be his vessel, a reminder that resistance was always futile. He gave the order to attack. The first wave of Council ships accelerated toward the human line. Their weapons charged, ready to end this annoying rebellion once and for all. Then the reinforcements arrived. It started with a single ship, a Vethrani cruiser, old and battered, dropping out of hyperspace behind the Council fleet. Then another, then a dozen more. Porter watched his tactical display in disbelief as more ships appeared. Dotharian frigates, Melkoth carriers, vessels from species he had never heard of, ships that looked like they had been held together with rust and hope, all of them jumping into the system and broadcasting the same message on all frequencies. "We do not kneel." It was not a fleet. It was barely even an armada. It was a collection of stolen ships, rebel vessels, and anything that could fly and fight. 312 ships in total, crewed by beings from 19 different species who had watched President Dunn's speech and decided that if humans could stand, so could they. On the Eternal Dominion, High Arbiter Velthrax stared at the tactical display. His advisors were shouting about betrayal, about containment, about retreat. He ignored them. This changed nothing. 4,000 against 400. The math was still in his favor. "Destroy them all," he ordered. "Every single one." The battle lasted 11 hours. Porter fought from the bridge of the Endurance, directing his ships with a precision born from decades of experience. He had studied the Council's tactics, their weaknesses, their blind spots. He used all of it. Human destroyers darted between the massive Council vessels, targeting their engines and weapons systems. The rebel ships drew fire, allowing Earth's fleet to strike from unexpected angles. Katie Webb, promoted to commander for the battle, coordinated the attacks with an almost supernatural ability to predict the enemy's movements. The Council fleet was larger, but it was also slow. Its commanders had never fought a real battle. They relied on formations and protocols that had not changed in 40,000 years. When those formations were disrupted, they did not know how to adapt. The humans and their allies did. Captain Grant, commanding the hastily repaired Defiance, led a squadron directly at the Eternal Dominion. It was a suicide run, everyone knew it, but someone had to keep Velthrax distracted. Grant's ship took hit after hit, systems failing, crew dying. But they kept coming. "For Earth," Grant said as he fired his last missiles. "For everyone, whoever said no." The Defiance was destroyed 300 meters from the Eternal Dominion's hull, but its missiles struck true, crippling the Dreadnought's main weapons array. High Arbiter Velthrax was forced to retreat to a secondary vessel. The tide began to turn. Rebel ships targeted Council vessels that had oppressed their people for generations. There was fury in their attacks, a rage that had been building for centuries. Council crews, many of them conscripts from subjugated worlds, began surrendering rather than fight. Some even turned on their own officers. After 8 hours, the Council fleet had lost over 1,500 ships. The Human Alliance had lost 140. The mathematics had changed. After 10 hours, Velthrax signaled retreat. Over half his remaining fleet was damaged or destroyed. The rebellion had spread beyond control, and for the first time in his long life, he felt something he had never felt before. Fear. The Council fleet fled. They left behind a field of wreckage. Thousands of ships, millions of dead, and an empire that would never be the same. Porter sat in his chair on the bridge of the Endurance, watching the enemy retreat. Around him, his crew was crying, laughing, holding each other. He felt nothing yet. The numbness would take time to fade. "Admiral," his communications officer turned to him. "We're receiving transmissions from across the galaxy, other species. They want to know what happens now." Porter thought about that. What did happen now? The Council was broken but not destroyed. The rebellion had succeeded but was far from over. The galaxy had changed in 11 hours, and no one knew what shape it would take next. "Tell them," he said slowly, "that we're just getting started." 1 year later, the Galactic Assembly held its first session. It was not a council of elder species ruling over their subjects. It was a gathering of equals, representatives from 47 worlds, each one with an equal voice. Admiral Porter was there, now retired, representing Earth as an observer. He had refused a formal position. "I'm a Navy man," he told President Dunn. "Politics is above my pay grade." She had laughed at that. The first time he had heard her laugh in months. The Assembly's first act was to establish a principle: no species would ever be forced to submit to another. Tribute was abolished. Conquest was forbidden. Each world would determine its own fate. It was not a perfect system. There would be conflicts, disagreements, probably wars. The galaxy was too big and too complicated for easy solutions. But it was a start. After the session, a reporter approached Porter. She was young, from one of the news networks that had covered the war, and she had a question that had been bothering her. "Admiral, everyone calls this humanity's victory, but you only had 93 ships. The rebels had over 300. Doesn't the credit really belong to them?" Porter smiled. It was the first genuine smile he had worn in a long time. "We didn't win because of our ships," he said. "We won because we reminded people of something they'd forgotten." "What's that?" "That you can say no." He looked out the window at the stars, at the vast galaxy that was now, finally, free. For 100,000 years, the Council told everyone that resistance was impossible, that submission was the only choice, and everyone believed them, because no one had ever proven otherwise. He turned back to the reporter. "We just proved otherwise. That's all we did. We showed the galaxy that one word, no, is more powerful than all the ships and weapons in the universe. The rebels didn't fight because we had a better army. They fought because we gave them permission to believe in themselves." The reporter nodded slowly. "So what happens now? What's humanity's role in this new galaxy?" Porter thought about the question. He thought about Clara Dunn and Jack Grant and Katie Webb. He thought about Danny Cole and Sethka and all the beings who had risked everything because a small species from a small planet had refused to kneel. "We keep reminding people," he said finally. "We keep showing them that freedom is possible. We keep saying no to anyone who tries to take it away." He looked at the stars one more time. That's who we are. That's who we'll always be. The future stretched out before them, uncertain and beautiful and free, and humanity walked into it with their heads held high.